It is 28 minutes past 7 o'clock here on your Monday. Now, look, there is no doubt that Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine has changed the world. We are now living in new and somewhat more dangerous times. But while the brutality of war remains the same, the speed of communication, technology, and spread of information adds that new layer to the environment. So what does social media actually and the media play during these times? To have this dialogue, we're privileged to be joined with Ukrainian academic professor Natalia Chaban from University of Canterbury, whose expertise is in political communication, media, and public diplomacy. So with that, I say talo falava and welcome to the show this morning.
Talo falava.
Thank you again, Professor, for joining us. Of course, this would probably affect you more so, knowing that, you have family, and I would say, how have they been during these sort of chaotic and devastating times?
Thank you very much for your very kind question. My family is very small. I have only my mom, dad, and my sister lives in the United States. So my parents, at the moment, they crossed the border with Poland, and they are staying with my sister in the United States.
Wow.
And that happened after the war started, and it was a very difficult decision for them. They really didn't want to go, but my city is very close to the capital, Kyiv, only 3 hours by car. And after lots of discussions and lots of heated conversations, they left. And after a difficult journey, they're in safety. Having said that, of course, my friends and many colleagues from my past years of working in Ukraine are still there. And as you know, the story is difficult and news is devastating.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, Professor, the fact that you've actually been able to keep in touch with your family, I would say, what was it like for yourself just being able to watch what is actually happening in front of you?
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. Ukrainian people have several big values, and family value is a huge value. We love our kids. We honor our elderly. And at the moment, you probably heard around 3 million people have crossed the border looking for safety and refuge in the European countries as well as in countries around the world. And New Zealand is one of the countries who very generously opened a very special scheme for the Ukrainian family members to come and reunite with New Zealand citizens of Ukrainian descent. And you probably heard there are around 900 civilians now dead, among them around 100 children. And these are insane tragedies for many families. And this is something to keep in mind, that this war affects civilians, affects people who, and every tragedy will have an imprint on how things develop in the future. So to keep something in mind that
And you just sort of, touching on the whole visa thing, that New Zealand's obviously been kind enough to allow that. Would that then may prompt you to want to bring your parents over here?
We'll have to talk to my parents. At the moment, the voyage across a big country, Ukraine is a big country, and obviously changing how they live, because they still were working till the last day they left, how it's going to impact them. So there's still more conversations to be taken, but it's wonderful to know that there is such a generous support. New Zealand gave $6 million in humanitarian aid to Ukraine, and the scheme to support people from Ukraine is very, very generous.
Now, of course, with your expertise, Professor, in regards to communication, the role really of social media and media, how you are seeing it sort of play throughout this war at the moment.
Yep. I think this is a very important question. This war demonstrated that the role of information is incredibly important. And this is information not only about social media and internet, but also what happens to traditional sources of communication. I'm talking about television and radio. You probably heard that many TV towers were bombed in Ukraine. So one of the targets in this war is actually communication profession, communication experts, and also channels of communication. There are hackers attacks on the Ukrainian media channels who moved to online. So there is a big role of internet in communication. And of course, there are social media.
But even how's your take on the misinformation that can come through all of this?
Well, it depends what side are you talking about, because during the war, communication starts flowing in particular circles and flows. Each side of attacker and of a victim, they have to secure certain circles in communication that would guarantee the best mobilization of resources. So if you talk about Ukrainian side, what we see a lot is a very what the Washington Post calls the Ukraine is at the moment winning an information war, and this is because of very coordinated set of messages coming from the top, from the leader, President Zelensky. He has very talented communication aides who are his consultant advisors. And then you see a whole system of bloggers, commentators who are independent people, but who are analyzing and existing in a big ecology. I can talk about Russia, but let me ask me a question.
Sure. If you're tuning in, we are catching up with the University of Canterbury Professor Natalia Chaban. I must say that, Professor, there's been multiple attempts of peace talks, right, that have taken place, though. Have you seen sort of what diplomatic talks should be taking place and the progress of it?
Well, you probably know that there are several rounds of negotiations. First, they were taking place in a face-to-face format. Now they moved to the Zoom format, which is an interesting example of how virtual and digital reality comes not only into the media circles, but also into diplomatic circles. At the moment, a lot of information is not clear or available for the general public. This is normal when we talk about war and peace negotiations. A lot of this information remains sensitive and they have to keep it. They also agreed, two sides, that they will not announce positions before they agree at least on 80-90% of the positions. The Russian side actually has released some information, again, violating the sort of agreement. But at the moment, they're negotiating many things. Perhaps one of the most important and the current issues is how to help civilians. For example, how to arrange the safety corridors to evacuate people. These are more operational, but there are also bigger goals. And at the moment, they do not comment on the bigger goals. And this is normal in war and peace.
Yeah, and then obviously I just want to backtrack a little bit. Then, of course, Russia having at the moment being now controlling its media, banning certain social media channels. I suppose, how then does someone report on the war, and the impacts of this if they're now being banned?
Yeah, absolutely. This is something to keep in mind, that in a totally unprecedented move, the state controls Facebook, cut off Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube is under the question. As I already mentioned, Russian situation is different because there is a group of media who are in total support of the state and the special military operation, using the euphemism. Then a number of journalists who could not agree with the situation actually left the Russian Federation, and many of them are having alternative media sources. And if you have VPN, you can access them from Russia. So there are layers of complexity on how information gets to the population in the Russian Federation.
Love that. Thank you for that, Professor. I would say, just as we sort of wrap up, any other notable developments, or concerns that are sort of maybe taking place during this war that are maybe different from past wars? Is it what's something that we should be looking for?
I suppose one of the most unprecedented examples, and going back to conversation about the media in the Russian Federation, is the scale of how fake presented as truth and truth is being pushed down. This is something to keep in mind for all of us. But I suppose an unprecedented is the unity of the world that shows its support to Ukraine. Ukraine is not a well-known country in this part of the world, not but the sanctions, the humanitarian support, this is unprecedented and we haven't seen it before. And I suppose that I will stop with that, and I say big thank you to everybody who supports Ukraine.
No, thank you, thank you. I mean, I think I would like to then just ask your final thoughts, though, Professor. We are very fortunate here because we have access to social media. So then how can we and other countries use our social media platforms to actually support Ukraine?
I suppose as all critical consumers of information, we need to read many sources. We need to be critical to the information which comes our way, and comment and read and talk. I think this is our best support to sort of the cause of democracy and the critical attitude towards information.
Awesome. Professor, such great insight that you've given us this morning. Really appreciate your time on being on the show this morning. Thank you.
Thank you.
No